Breaking into the music business is a unique journey for everyone, but the love of music and the culture is the connecting tie. These are the untold stories of how Canada's most prominent Black entertainment professionals got started in an industry that never sleeps. I'm Jesse Jones, and welcome to Season 2 of AMPLIFY. Regrets. We all have them. Those moments where we wish we had made different choices and taken alternative paths. In the music industry, regrets can be powerful motivators, pushing artists to reach new heights and create impactful music. Or they can become a heavy burden. In this episode, our guests find motivation in the unlikeliest of places, like acclaimed singer-songwriter Jully Black pondering a classic sliding door moment. Should she have ventured south to the US? Or stayed grounded in her Canadian roots?
When I first got signed to MCA Records, and back when, I had an opportunity to live in America, and they would have paid for all of my everything. Just live here. Here's your everything. And I was youngish, and at the time I took the advice of somebody that was a part of my camp and said, you know what, let's just take what they would have given us, the U.S. funds, and back then it was 1.5. I think it was 1.71 or something. It was actually pretty crazy back then. And so the decision was made to let's still live in Canada and work from here. So I just would have, I think, liked to know what that could have been like. But I know you know what the answer I'm pretty much off and give anyway, is that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be anyway.
And what if Carey Riley, Sony Music Canada's marketing director, hadn't been rooted so deeply on Canadian soil? What if she had ventured beyond familiar borders?
Building relationships with some of my international counterparts, definitely, having worked with some of the developing superstars that became global phenomenons, and being able to say, okay, well, what if I would have uprooted and moved and spent more time on building that relationship? Where would I have been today versus staying here and being rooted where I started? But I wouldn't say it's regret, because I think that life has evolved and shaped in such a way that I enjoy what I have. So I really don't feel like I have any regrets.
Beni Johnson, founder and director of 10 at 10 Music and Culture, also contemplates the what-ifs. Should he have chosen sports over music? Or artistry over building a solid community?
Even high school, before I went to Calgary, I had a scholarship for football to go play in Quebec. And I think even just that trajectory could have been completely different, because I stayed in Alberta for the next however many, 25 years or whatever. So that was a big thing that I don't know what that would have looked like. Do I become this artist that I became? Do I become this community builder and organization maker and entrepreneur within music if I go to school for football? I have no idea. So that was a big decision, just to stay within Alberta. And then within music, I think I turned off that individual passion to be an artist, about 8 years ago or so, because the grind of creating that organization and building up the community, I saw that as something I should put first. So those are, I think, two bigger things that I didn't say no to it directly, but maybe it was no to my own personal career to kind of put the community in front of myself.
Life is a journey full of mistakes and decisions that shape our destinies. And for MJ, the host of Pure Country Radio, mistakes are opportunities to learn, recalibrate, and forge new paths towards your dreams.
I'm exactly where I want to be, right? And then you think to yourself, oh, there's a guy that I would like to erase. But that my memory will take care of that in the future. But honestly, when it comes to regrets or anything that I would do differently, there's not a single thing at all. I'm a big believer, it may sound cliche, everything happens for a reason, but it does. And when that reason, I'm sitting here today because of every single mistake, or just decision I've made.
And of course, there will always be moments when we wish all things were different. Vivian Barclay, managing director of Warner Chappell Music Canada, knows this all too well. She knows that while you can't change what's already occurred, you can control your response and actions in the present moment.
every single person that works in the music business is going to tell you about some artist that they didn't like jump on. Everybody's going to tell you about something that, you know, they hesitated on. And we all have those stories, every single last one of us. And sometimes it's just not the right time or whatever. And so for me, I think that's, you know, it's interesting because I feel like living in Canada, as long as I was in Canada, then I moved to the States to work, and then I came back to Canada. And living in Canada, as long as I've lived in Canada, has dulled some of my Jamaican attitude about how we get certain things done, and I don't like it. And so sometimes I have to just like, we do get, and everybody falls into the pattern here, we do get a little too polite here sometimes about how we do things. We don't like to ruffle the feathers. And as a Black woman, that's especially so, because if not, you're literally just labeled the angry Black woman. And at some point, you just get so over and tired of it. You're really just over being called the angry Black woman. So sometimes you do kind of just take it down a notch and you go, oh, you know what, I'm just going to let this go or whatever. And my only regret sometimes is when I do that, because at the end, I know what I'm saying is something I should be pushing on. And if I had pushed on it a little bit, it probably would have changed faster. But sometimes you get to a point where you're just like, I go back to what I said to you earlier. It's you need peace in your own brain. And there's nothing to be gained personally from stressing yourself out for other people. And like some people will say, oh, it's because you work for a company. I don't care if you work for a company or you work for yourself. At the end of the day, you need peace in your brain. And so we're all going to do and make decisions sometimes that later on you'll be like, oh, I wish I had said that better or done that better or, you know, made a bigger deal about this. But again, like, you can't take it on. It's gone. It's past. So no, I don't really have regrets. I have things where I wish I did better or said better, but I don't have regrets.
For dancer and choreographer Hollywood, his story serves as a reminder that setbacks, disappointments, and even failures are not the end of the road. They're stepping stones towards growth and self-discovery.
Drag Race. I sent an email to casting. I said, hey, you're going to need a choreographer, and I am him. Casting calls me back. Emailed me back, can I call you? Sure. She's talking to me on the phone. She's like, I'm not the person you need to talk to. I just wanted to see if you felt like your email. I'm like, do I? She said, you feel better. I'm going to make sure the person who needs to see this gets it. Had I not gone through all the adversity of people continuously telling me no and not being invited to audition for Sean Paul and all this other jazz, if I hadn't gone through all of that, I wouldn't have the tenacity that I have to show up in spaces the way that I show up in spaces and do the things that I do. No regrets.
There were times where others questioned Grammy-nominated producer Quest's decisions, but he remained resolute, knowing his blessing would come when he had fully bloomed.
I remember talking to my mom, and she was like, listen, everyone runs their own race. Like, don't watch what someone has. Like, your time will come. And when my time came, I was thankful it came when it did, because when I looked at it in retrospect, I was like, damn, if I had got this blessing or got into this situation when I was wanting it, I would have squandered this whole thing. I wouldn't have known what to do to better myself out of the situation. I would have just been like, oh, let me take this money and go do this and go do that and do things that weren't fruitful and weren't beneficial. I mean, we're very worldly. Whereas like when the opportunity came, I was a lot wiser. I was a lot more mature. So I was like, okay, cool. This is what I can do with this. I can do these things to help set up myself, set up my family, so on and so forth. So I just tell people, like, there's no pressure in trying to be the next person or trying to be in competition with the next person. Take your time, run your race, and you don't got to do no crazy deals or no off-putting situations. Your blessings will come when it's supposed to.
Blessings can arrive in moments of victory, achievement, or unexpected surprises. And when they come, like Vivian says, it's essential to give them the respect they deserve.
I think I have moments that things happen for the people that I work with that are successful moments that I get to celebrate in, that I'm like, oh, that's amazing that this happened. But I don't personally have like a, yeah, kind of like thing. I was excited when we got Advance off the ground. I get excited when, when I see another woman in being celebrated in the business. I get excited when artists get to realize their projects. I excited at a lot of stuff, but I don't really, I feel like if you're going to sit around and say, I made it, that's kind of weird. And I'm sure some people will look at me and say, well, because you're at the head of a company and you're as high as you can go, like from a corporate perspective. And that's probably true in this country anyway. Like if I, then sure. If that's how you look at it, then great, sure. I've made it to some pinnacle of something. But I also don't think that that's as high as one can go. So, but I'm also not the person that is over here striving for just titles. Like I've never been that kind of person. And I think that the title should reflect what it is you do. And I think that people should be given the respect professionally that they deserve and the credit that they deserve. But I also think that some of it is just what we do. It's our job and it's not that deep.
As an artist, Quest knows firsthand the passion and dedication poured into each and every project, but you can never rest on your laurels because you're only as good as your last project.
One thing that no one taught me that I had to learn for myself is this industry is very heavily predicated on what you're doing and what you've just done, not what you've done previously. Because it's like you can, and I've heard it a lot of times, you can be hot today, cold tomorrow. And it's a reality because I've seen that happen for a lot of people. And even in my own experience, I've seen that where something will happen or I'll be a part of something that's really big and everyone's phone is open. My calls are being answered and then let's say it's a bit quiet and things kind of change, right? And I think that's one of the hardest things for creatives to understand, because I think a lot of times when creatives get a moment, they feel like, oh, the door's open. I'm here. Everyone's going to acknowledge me. And it's like, yeah, they'll acknowledge you up until a point.
And problem solver Olivier Vander, Zaag, Director of Regulatory Affairs at Music Canada, knows the significance of doing great work because the impact is greater than him.
If I don't do my job well, I think you won't see it tomorrow, but in a few years' time, it will be a problem. And you're consistently solving problems that add value. Not an F1 driver or a basketball champion, but it feels amazing. And it's good to get a win on the board whenever you absolutely know that you've done something that will sustain value for the industry for years to come.
Jully Black understood the assignment when she was invited to perform the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game. It wasn't just another performance, though. It was a career-defining Canadian heritage moment, a lesson learned, a milestone reached.
Knowing that I was going into this opportunity as a bit of an underdog, they treated us white gloves. It was nice, the whole crew. But typically, the Canadian anthem is kind of like the Nashway. And I went in there as I had a Finch mission. This is where it pays to be a hood girl. It says, yo, I'm going into this thing, I'm going to flatten it. Trust me. And it wasn't beyond flipping the word. I knew I was going to make sure it's soulful, make sure that I represent with poise, with grace. My vocals are on point. I got my rest. I didn't drink no Prosecco for the week. I did everything. I pulled out all the stops, right? And knowing that I was not just representing my country, but representing my history, my lineage, my ancestors. This was for the ancestors, brethren. My ancestors were dreaming. They were laying down, hard day at work, they smiled. They saw me, brethren. They saw me. That's when I went into that. That was my highlight. And then the announcer, saw my batty, trip up. Couldn't even figure out how to say my name. I was like, yeah, come true. You want to squat me do for that batty there? Come true. So anyway, and then we flip the word and it's a heritage moment, right? So highlight for sure. For the highlight, definitely.
In In the next episode of Amplify, we uncover the unique star power of each of our guests. What sets them apart? What do they bring to the table? And what advice do they have for those following in their footsteps? Tune in, take notes, and get ready to carve your path to greatness.